Okay, so they say Doctor Who is canceled, right? Technically, it's not really canceled, it's being put out to tender, but the way the fan base feels, they feel it's canceled. We only are, I think, about a month out from this news, so there's no way of knowing exactly, but everybody's really pissed, and it, everybody's still pretty pissed at RTD, and to be fair, RTD seems pretty pissed with the fandom. But, like, for the most part, everybody's just mourning the possibility the show may not come back. And a few of the fans have talked themselves into a corner where they're trying to think maybe the show has to stay gone for a while. And I just don't think I agree with that. Like, just I don't know. It's like everybody keeps saying the show needs a completely new direction, and I don't think it needs a completely new direction. I want to be that guy, but I think it just needs a good idea. You know, like I mean, Moffat wanted to come up with a new darker take on the Doctor, but I don't think Trove was really that dark. You know, like he went out of his way to forgive a Dalek. He went out of his way. No, he went out of his way to change a Dalek good. He went out of his way to save Davros. He went out of his way to save Missy. He went out of his way to help the Zygons. He went out of his way to forgive Clara after she did one of the darkest things I've ever seen in this show. Trove doesn't feel dark to me, you know? I mean, he was one of the best doctors I was, but he just wasn't dark. And I think also the shift in energy from 11 to 12 is why we got the shift in audience. Like, the age is one thing, but it's just like there was so much energy in the 10th Doctor era, so much energy in the 11th Doctor era, but by the time we got to 12, everything had just muted. And I think that was a risk that didn't pay off in terms of numbers. And I think with Chibnall, you saw something similar, right? He wanted to, first off, he tried to get rid of the nostalgia bait. He tried to get rid of the recurring villains. He tried to downplay the Daleks. He tried to downplay the idea of everybody like constantly gassing up the Doctor, saying how legendary the Doctor is. No more mystery boxes. There was no more magical companions. You know, like the winning theme for that first season was more the relationship between Graham and Ryan. There was not really any other winning theme that season, you know, that first season. And part of that was just because, like, Chibnall was trying really hard to try to coordinate all of the scripts since he brought in a lot of new writers, you know, and I'm not trying to judge that, but it was difficult for him. And it's just, then by the time RTD came back, and I don't like criticizing him because everybody is criticizing him a lot, but it just feels like with RTD's second era, it doesn't feel like what's the character arc, what's the story arc, what's the myth arc, what were you trying to do? It feels like he came in trying to recreate what Moffat had done after people were already still tired of what Moffat had done. And it just feels to me like the problem isn't doing something new. I, I'm not against people trying something new, but it's just like don't spend all your time trying to make sure you have a new, fresh idea. I want them to come up with a compelling idea that's a good take on this character, that challenges this character. I want something like the Doctor having to rethink his relationship with humanity. I want something like the Doctor having to deal with that guy from 73 yards and having to think about whether he needs to protect humanity from itself. You know, like whether the Doctor needs, like maybe the Doctor has to deal with the fact that Wardrobe Gwillem is coming, and the Doctor has to deal with the possibility that Arth is the villain, you know? And he has to confront whether he can still save Arth if Arth is going to be opposed to him. Like, we can talk about the Torchwood storyline being Arth opposed to the Doctor, but they were secret, and just their relationship just wasn't as adverse. listen as advice as Roger Ap Gwilym can make it. You know? I think that would be a compelling storyline. I want storylines like that. I'm sick of people talking about, ooh, we need to kill off a character. We need to, um, we need to kill off a character. We need to do something big and new and interesting. I just, it feels like we've gotten to the point where the fandom wants to talk like the corporate people were talking, or whatever. You want some cool, eye-catching idea, and then you get surprised when ITD acts like this. I think, again, I just want some interesting idea that challenges who the Doctor is at a deep level. You know, like maybe there's some civil war between the survivors of Gallifrey, and we find out that Romana has been on Earth and Susan has been on Earth, and that Susan was actually trying to get the Doctor's help because there's a civil war between the two groups of Time Lords, and she wants the Doctor's help to resolve it. You know, and it would be interesting if we found out that, like, technically Ace knew Susan was on Earth and was protecting her from him because Ace and the Time Lords don't trust the Doctor. Because he did intentionally try to kill them. It wasn't just because of the Daleks, he did try to kill them. And the rest of the Time Lords don't trust him, including Romana. You know, they understand his motivations, but then they're like, the Doctor is so unstable. Did he intentionally try to kill us? You know, like, I want interesting storylines like that. I want real compelling storylines that are actually thought through. I don't want someone to just come up with some word like, oh, we need newness, we need darkness, we need death. It's like you come up with a word and then you try to work around that word. Just like RTD gave you a few words and then he tried to come up with a script around it. It just, I want something more, I want depth to the ideas coming here. Now, in terms of the show being canceled, I'm not sure I buy that it's canceled, but you know what? Let's try going through a few scenarios I wrote down. Give me a second. A few scenarios. Okay, so one possibility is that we're looking at 5 years, right? Another possibility is 20 to 30 years, right? You know? A third possibility is that it just doesn't come back at all. The fourth possibility is that Peter McTee comes back as showrunner and it's made in-house. The fifth possibility is someone small and unknown comes in. Now, I just saw a video from the Confused Adipose. They said they saw, he said he saw a podcast from Moffat suggesting there are people who are interested. Like, there was a Deadline article suggesting that no one is interested, but they just interviewed like 4 producers for a basic idea of what's going on. I feel like Moffat would have a more informed idea of everybody who would make a pitch. Now, I have those 5 scenarios, but I think I'm going to come in with some code because I like to be optimistic here. So here's the code. Of the cope ideas, 1, they already have a plan in place and are just waiting to announce everything. 2, ITD made the special and they have a plan in place. I don't think anybody believes this. And 3, ITD makes something low budget like the 5-ish Doctors or Tales of the TARDIS with Carolyn Ford as an apology and accidentally saves the show. It's not the craziest thing on the list, but nobody wants to hear that right now. Like, that's my thing. You know, I like to believe that something good is going to happen and that this isn't permanent. Part of me wants to believe that we're going to get some news by the end of the year or by next year, or maybe there's a very good possibility it just won't come back for another 20 to 30 years, or it won't come back at all. And this is it. You know, like, I saw one person say that Doctor Who isn't made for the streaming era, but maybe it's possible Doctor Who just can't adapt. Maybe Doctor Who is like sitcoms, you know? like people keep talking about what killed the sitcom. I think the problem with sitcoms is sitcoms only work with a captive audience. Sitcoms work when nobody has anything to watch. So then the network can make this nice, cheap sort of content slot. You know, that's what a sitcom is. And what if Doctor Who, on some level, has a similar thing going on, and it just can't work in a new environment, in a new media environment where people can choose what to watch? Maybe Doctor Who can't compete with that. Personally, though, I think Doctor Who's competed for a while, and I think it can do it. It it needs compelling ideas. I think just the the model's there, the formula's there, and it's worked. We just need to keep trying, and we can't just give up just because we've had some failures. I think I'm tired of all of these new, interesting, eye-catching ideas when we just need storylines that challenge the Doctor as a character, you know, or maybe companions that challenge the Doctor on some level, on a deeper level. I don't know.